Hello everyone, what is up? I'm Ewan from What Culture, joined today by Josh Brown.
Hello.
And Ash Millman.
Hello.
And today, in honour of Independence Day, which of course is no longer an American holiday because in 1996 we all went to war to defeat the aliens, so now we all celebrate the 4th of July.
Yeah.
We thought it would be a great idea to go through our favourite independent films of all time, or what we consider to be the best independent films of all time. I've asked both Josh and Ash to compile 5 different independent films. I've done the same, and we're going to talk about basically what they mean and if they're good, which they are because they're on a list, and what is so good about them.
Not gonna lie, shocking this that you just throw me this early in the morning. Josh, all of those independent movies like in existence. Give me your top 5 by 12 o'clock.
Top 5 now. Pictures of Spider-Man by 5.
I think we've done a good job. I know some spoilers of your guys' lists, and I'm excited.
Yes.
Who's gone first?
Do you want me to go first? I'll go
Yes.
first?
Yeah.
Because
Hostess with the most.
I'll go from 5 till 1. Because
Yeah.
1, I think, is really obvious, and everyone is either going to be like, oh, really? Or, oh, yeah. So, number 5, I'm going to talk about The Hurt Locker, which was
Interesting.
Catherine Bigelow's one of my favourite Academy Award ceremonies ever, because Catherine Bigelow just walking on stage winning the Best Director Oscar after James Cameron's been there with Avatar, and he's just there like crumpling. It's like Mr. Burns in that Star is Burns episode, and he's there going, I bought everyone in Tinseltown, and he doesn't get the Oscar. And like Catherine Bigelow's just there walking on stage. The Hurt Locker is this amazing film all about the Iraq War, and more specifically the occupation that followed, and it follows Jeremy Renner. It's got Anthony Mackie in it as well, and it's just an amazing dissection of war and the psychological toll of just warfare and how that can have on the individual. I think a lot of war films tend to maybe focus on the wider historical implications of like going into conflict. Like I've got another film I'm going to talk about later called Platoon, which is very much about America appraising its own role post-Vietnam. But The Hurt Locker is just this amazing kind of looking at the human cost of war and how someone can become addicted to war. And I think this performance from Jeremy Renner, we've not really seen him do anything really quite like this. I mean, I think he does something similar in Wind River. I don't know if you've seen that.
I have.
Oh God, Wind River's such a good.
Yeah.
That was like an unexpected.
Yeah, but he's not really done anything really like this. And I thought the way he kind of sold the role of the kind of the IEDs and like going through and like disarming these bombs, he had a complete death wish. And I've never been more immersed in a war film before. And the way Bigelow frames the action, that opening scene. I think it's Guy Pearce, isn't it, who plays the first bomb disposal expert, and the way they frame that whole thing where they find the guy on the phone and then they're running away and then you see the shrapnel coming. It's one of the most amazing sequences I've seen in a film.
Yeah.
And yeah, The Hurt Locker is probably one of my favorites.
It's like, it makes like war so intimate, I think. And I think it does it in a way that only sort of an independent movie kind of could. Like you say, it's like really psychologically driven and really drives home into like how like our relationship with war itself. And I don't think you can get that if you go like the mainstream route, like especially in today's age where if you want like, military help to like get all of like the iconography and all of like the equipment that you need to make a convincing, authentic war movie, you essentially hand over final script to like the US government. Like they literally look over the script, and if there's something they don't like in it, they're like, oh well, you've got to change that, or otherwise you don't get to use our sick tanks and planes.
That's one of the reasons why I really don't like Zero Dark 30. I think Zero Dark 30, even though it's done by Bigelow as well, it's kind of the antithesis of The Hurt Locker. It's all about like the hunt for Osama bin Laden. I think there was a really good story that Vice did about the assistance the CIA gave to the movie production studio on Zero Dark 30, which kind of I think detracts some of the authenticity of this, whereas this is very much America after Iraq looking at the human cost of that conflict.
There's like a whole big disparity between blockbuster, like glorifying violence, hi-ho, we're going to war sort of films, and then actually independent, like gritty, nitty, this is the emotional side of it. And it's a great film for that.
Does anyone want to go next?
Go on, Ash.
Me?
What's your number 5?
Me. My number 5, I didn't put these in order, I just writ them all down.
It's not the point of the video, but okay, fine.
I'm going to go for number 1 on my list, which is technically number 5, which is...
It's like Tarantino.
Yeah, it's The Invitation, which is not a massive movie, a nice little Netflix treat, a sweet little Netflix treat. But it's about a guy who gets an invitation to his ex-wife's house party, this dinner party, and he turns up and he's like, right, something fishy's going on here. What's going on? Because she's a bit all over the place and has this new husband. She disappeared. She's come back. She's got a new husband. All these friends have come back together to talk to her, and she's like been in like a weird cult place and has come back and trying to talk about it and pretending that everything's fine and great and wonderful. And the whole film is this guy sitting there, Logan Marshall Green, I think it is, sitting there being like, ooh, I don't know about this. I think something weird's going on here, and you're never quite sure whether it's something. You're never quite weird sure. My voice is going. You're never quite sure if something weird is happening until the very end, where it all unravels. So I won't do a spoiler.
I haven't seen it yet.
Exactly.
But I
It
might
is
have to now.
really good. And
Yeah.
like, is a house party even a house party if you don't at some point try to get like indoctrinated into a cult? Like, is it really a success if that doesn't happen?
Exactly, man. Our teenage years, cult indoctrination. That's all that you needed. But yeah.
If I haven't drunk the Kool-Aid by the end of the night, then what is the point?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I love the invitation as well, actually. I think it's like the very definition of a slow build. Like,
Yeah.
it takes a long time to get to a potentially explosive climax, but I like the way it sort of keeps you guessing all the way
Yeah.
through. Like, in a lot of movies where, horror movies especially, where people say, oh, it keeps you guessing, you don't know where it's going to go. You kind of do, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If something starts off quiet, you sort of guess the twist, or you're looking for a twist. In this one, I genuinely think they make it really difficult to sort of read the room, because
Yeah.
like you said, it's such a fractured social like encounter to begin with. Like, they
Yeah.
haven't seen each other for a long time, and something weird is off, but it's weird how far you push that. Because I
Yeah.
like how it gets you in the mindset of Logan Marshall Green's character, because he's a bit off as well, and he's not having like a
Yeah.
great time, and his understanding of reality is also slightly warped. So I like how they really play with the form in that
Yeah,
way.
you never know who to trust. It's proper. It's a proper good one. It's similar kind of to The Guest as well, which is the invitation and The Guest. I feel like they're a good pairing, because it's very much, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's going to happen. All these people are a bit off kilter. Which one is telling the truth? Can I trust them? I don't know. But yeah, it is. Sorry, I was getting.
The guest and the invitation do sound like they're related.
Yeah,
Like the part
yeah.
one is the invitation, and then the guests arriving. I know
Yeah.
I'm completely going off on a tangent right now, but Josh Brown, what is one of your favorite independent films?
It is Richard Linklater's Before Sunrise. I always get them mixed up. The first of the
Levy.
Before trilogy. This is a shout out to James Hunt. I hope he's watching this, because he loves these as much as I do. I just think it's such a lush little movie that gets like a relationship right in a way that a lot of big budget romantic comedies at the time just sort of didn't. This one felt like truthful. It felt like romantic, but not like too romantic, not too schmaltzy, not too sentimental. It had like a bit of cynicism to it, but again, it wasn't positioning itself as a non-romantic comedy. It wasn't like trying to do the whole, ooh, like being sentimental is for lamos and we're just going to be cynical and dark about the world, which a lot of independent movies were doing in the 90s especially. But I think this just nails it so well. It's just about like a couple played by Ethan Hawke and Julia Depley. I always get that mixed up as well.
I thought it was like Delphi.
I'm sure it's definitely a P, but I could be wrong.
I'm not even going to attempt to.
But like it's essentially just 1 hour 45 minutes of those walking around Vienna and having conversations and getting to know each other, and they play it so well, and it's done. It's like it's made for barely any money at all, but the way it's shot is genuinely beautiful. And Linklater uses a lot of these long takes like through the city, so you get to look at them while you're also having these intimate conversations with these characters. And it's just something like you never really see in like a major Hollywood blockbuster that's so plot focused, whereas I think independent movies, the beauty of them is they get to be so character focused.
Yeah.
And like nothing technically potentially happens, but you get really into like the mindset of these characters, and they've become some of my favorites in cinema history.
It's like you're not like a passive observer in a way. It's like you're participating in their, because it's so authentic the way they sell that relationship.
Yeah.
Like it's just like you said, those long shots where they're going through the streets. It's like you're almost like going on a date with them as a really awkward third wheel.
That's
But
it, yeah.
It's so genuine, and I've never really encountered another kind of. We've all been invested in different romances and films, of course, but like never to the degree I think I've seen in the Before trilogy.
Absolutely, and I think Linklater especially has like the freedom in like his filmmaking style to explore a real human relationship over a long period of time. Like obviously he's done it with the Before trilogy, picking up with like this couple every 8 years and showing how that like might have realistically developed, and it's always surprising, it's always good. But then he also did it with Boyhood, which he shot over 12 years. It's just like the fact that he's had the space to do these things and just like go off his own back and do something small scale but really intimate over an extended period of time is like, that's awesome, and I want more of that. It's a cool way to tell stories.
Even his like shorter ones, or ones that aren't over like 500 years of actual life, they feel like that though. The way that he captures like how people interact and have like an interaction as a movie with no plot. Like Everybody Wants Some is one of my favorite ones of his. I just think that's wonderful because it's just enjoying everyone doing their own thing. It's literally capturing like an experience and an emotion and a point in time, and then playing it out for 2 hours, and you just get to like celebrate it with them. It's fantastic.
I think those are genuinely my favorite movies. I like
Yeah.
that you've got like two halves of Richard Linklater as well. You've got this sort of independent, really like great, mature Richard Linklater doing like Before trilogy. Then you've got School of Rock Richard Linklater, who is just as good in my opinion.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah,
He did School of Rock. You can't stop the School of Rock, my friend.
That's amazing. I didn't know that.
Yep.
I'm going to segue from The School of Rock, which is your favorite independent film of all time, right?
Yes.
To
Number one. Number one.
to Platoon. Like I just mentioned
Here we
before
go.
with Hurt Locker. Platoon, Oliver Stone, I think, has become a parody of himself in recent years. He's very much like just ever since JFK. I would recommend you all watch JFK. It's a very long film. It's about the conspiracy, or the sensible conspiracy that kind of killed the president. After that, he's kind of done the same thing over and over again. He's done, like, we had the Vietnam trilogy that he did, which started with Platoon, then the President's trilogy, which was JFK, Nixon, and then W. And those films are all worth watching, I would say, as well, but I just think you have to take them with a big old pinch.
A grain, a pinch, a
grain.
gollop.
Just all of,
Just
just
a
all the
gollop.
salt. Just actually just open up the salt shaker and just go. That'll be always. But again, Platoon, such an incredible film and a very kind of pivotal moment, almost in not just in American cinematic history, but in American history in general. Like, I can't really overstate the way this film kind of is influential in terms of America addressing Vietnam and conflicts. Josh is just sneezing.
I'm so sorry.
The most silent sneeze I've ever seen in my life.
It is an incredible film, and Oliver Stone's own experiences as a draftee into the war in Vietnam really shine through. It's a very, very difficult film to watch, but it's also very honest. Before Platoon kind of came around, we had films like The Green Berets, which was literally just propaganda of the movie. That was John Wayne kind of going into Vietnam. America's taking on all the communists. And again, what Stone did was he cut through the rhetoric to deliver a film kind of around about a time when America was trying to reappraise its role after Vietnam. And it's very, very fascinating. And it's one of those things where it's a fantastic anti-war statement. And it's also got some of the best characters I've ever seen in a war film. Willem Dafoe as, I forget his name, is it Sergeant? I forget. It's not Sergeant Elias. Elias is the bad one, isn't he? Or is he the good one?
I don't know.
I can't remember.
How you mentioned it.
But Charlie Sheen's amazing in it as kind of the young private getting drafted in. And I think from the very first scene of Platoon, where you have, is it Akio and Strings or whatever it's called? It's in quite a lot of...
Yes.
That starts playing through and you see all these kind of young American boys being put into body bags and then being shipped off back home. It's one of those... It's such a seminal moment in cinematic history.
Yeah. I think I agree. Platoon is a really weird one for me because I remember when we were talking about this before we came in to record, like you mentioned that, and I sort of went like, "Is it an independent movie?" But then when you explained it, I was like, "Oh my god, it is!" But I think it's one of those that's sort of like, at least in the cultural consciousness, sort of like become elevated in a way. Like I remember when I was first getting into movies when I was like 14, 15, and Platoon was one of the first ones I watched because I thought it had this reputation of being like this great war movie, and it wasn't what I expected. I expected more bombast, more sort of like, I don't know, clear messaging, less nuance, and I watched it, and to be honest, I was kind of disappointed at the time.
Yeah.
But going back to it now, I can appreciate the subtleties of it, and I think it's like Oliver Stone is a weird one, but Platoon is really good.
Yeah. Cool. Ash, do you want to lead your next choice?
Sure.
Diminish.
Let's do it. There is. I'm gonna go. I've got a load of spooky choices down, which I think are great. But I'm gonna go for. There's two others that aren't scary, which are. First one, Reservoir Dogs.
Hey!
Because it's got to be brought up, hasn't it? Independent film, Quentin Tarantino doing his thing, getting all these people involved in a massive bank heist that goes wrong, and they're trying to figure out who the hell has snitched. And it's just wonderful. It's just a great, really enjoyable film for something that is actually quite grotty, like with the ear scene and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I just love the way Tarantino does things like that his own way, and that he's such an auteur of filmmaking, and he doesn't need a big studio behind him to do all these things. Like, he's popped out so many amazing movies that follow his specific style, and this is the birth of that, because it's like kind of like the first one that's come out. And it's the best part about it is it's an hour and a half long. Like,
that is the best part about it.
It's so tight. Like, he doesn't need all this whole like spieling 2-hour, 3-hour thing. He blocks it all into an hour and a half, and it's just an absolute roller coaster ride of strangeness and these crazy, horrible people. And I think it's great.
I think that might be my favorite Tarantino.
Yeah.
Like, I remember from the opening scene when you've got Harvey Keitel in the front seat and you've got Tim Roth bleeding to death in the back, and he's screaming. I remember watching that when I was a bit younger and just thinking, oh, I do love films, you know?
Yeah.
Like, they are just really good.
Oh my God. I remember this. I remember it was in like the Malcolm in the Middle or something, or the Middle, one of those programs. It was what the husband and the wife. He said that he only liked her because she pretended to like Reservoir Dogs. And I just always think about it every time I watch Reservoir Dogs. I'm like, oh yeah, the cool people like Reservoir Dogs that get together. Don't lie about it. It's a really weird reference, but I always think about it every time I watch it.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I think I learned the other day that they literally had to bring their own cars to set because they couldn't afford to get stuff from the studio. I love Reservoir Dogs as well. I'm actually going to bring up another Tarantino film later on. But like, you know, it's such a well framed. It almost reminds me of Hitchcock in a way.
Yeah,
it's very much suspenseful. I know they don't reveal he's a mole until halfway through the film, but I remember that twist being like, oh, like it's so good. And like, even though you don't see the bank heist, it's one of those things. It's like, for most heist films, the heist is the centerpiece of the film. You think of like Heat, you think of the stuff like that, Dog Day Afternoon and stuff. But this, you don't even see it. And the most interesting thing is the build-up and the fallout. I love the way he brings that together. And, you know, we kind of talk of Tarantino as being this big old nerd because he loves incorporating all his favorite genres. But Reservoir Dogs is kind of a unique thing to me. I can't really pin it down as being derivative of necessarily any one film in particular, whereas other things you kind of say is aping different techniques.
100%. I think a lot of that's obviously down to sort of like Tarantino himself as a creative force. But I think what you were saying, Ash, about like it being so tight and sort of like, and like what you were saying about like not showing the heist and having to bring their own cars. I think a lot of like the drive for creativity is actually born out of the limitations of independent filmmaking. Like if you don't have endless amounts of money or endless like resources at your disposal, it forces you to get creative and do things in an interesting way that we haven't seen before, which is why I think it like independent movies in general are just like always so innovative and always pushing the medium forward because they have to out of necessity.
Yeah, it's where you get all the best directors from. It's from people who've had to like absolutely scrap their way through the film system until someone's gone, wow, actually, that's all right. Let's give you some money and a system behind it. But like, yeah, Quentin Tarantino is such a wonderful product of that mentality. He's great.
Cool. Josh, what's your next choice?
I have a double bill, okay, because they both sort of embody a similar ethos, and I couldn't choose one because they're two very different movies. One is Evil Dead 2, and one is John Waters' Pink Flamingos, right? Because I love both of these movies individually, but because even though Pink Flamingos is obviously very button pushing and controversial and actually really horrible to watch, like it has no. I don't even really enjoy watching John Waters movies, but they have something to them, just like an atmosphere or like a passion to them that I find really infectious. And even though disgusting things are happening and I'm seeing people eat actual poo and bare their butthole to my face,
A hostile moon,
I still can't help but keep watching. I love the idea of just like these filmmakers, Sam Raimi or John Waters or whoever it is, just rocking up with a camera and just being like, look, we're going to make a film. We're going to use whatever's around and we're going to try our best. Like the Bruce Campbell in Evil Dead 2, the amount of like just I don't know effort he puts into that role. Like he's literally killing himself for like the art to make people laugh and make people scared. It is great, just the idea of I'm going to do it myself. We're just going to throw everything into this. I don't care if actors leave. We'll just replace them with people and makeup. Just spat all over my microphone there. That's how passionate I am about Evil Dead 2. I just love that ethos, and I think that not only makes great movies, but it makes like lasting movies that really stand the test of time, even though aesthetically they're dated. Like the ideas and drive behind them will never be.
No, I think that's what makes a good cult classic as well. Like the whole point of Evil Dead and everything is the exploitation movie and just going, right, how grotty can we get? What sort of horrible, underground, disgusting audience can we appeal to the most? And then celebrating that as an art form, which is sometimes pushes the bucket, pushes the boat, pushes something.
Bucket full of nastiness.
Yes, pushes it a bit too far and you're like, oh God, where have we gone here? But the Evil Dead 2 is the most wonderful celebration of saying, right, we made this real nasty piece of work and now we're going to laugh at it as well. Like, I just think the way that it functions is fantastic. And Bruce Campbell is a hero and a national treasure.
Absolutely amazing. Must be protected at all costs.
Keep him safe.
Him and that fella that I've completely forgotten his name, so I don't even know I brought him up in the first place.
Him and that fella.
Yeah, that fella, man.
He played the Tick a while ago.
Oh, I've forgotten his name.
Yeah, I've forgotten his name as well. Yeah. Never mind. Moving swiftly on. Ash, have you just done? No, Josh.
It's you now, my friend.
Oh, God. Right. Okay. Right,
on the spot.
The granddaddy of independent films, and that is Easy Rider.
Oh,
I know a lot of people really don't like this film.
I actually don't like
which
it,
is interesting. I've got a bone to pick with you, because I encountered this film whilst studying history. I had a module on America in the 60s at Northumbria University, taught by the legendary Brian Ward. He's fantastic. He had a really good module. Big up Brian Ward. And it was an amazing module because it allowed me to there were loads of films on that I'd already seen. But I'd never encountered Easy Rider before, and looking back at that kind of almost generational quality of that film about these bunch of stoners just going on their road trip trying to figure out their own place in America and trying to find that that little kind of steeple on like the top of the hill, just trying to find their own place in it. And I find it really interesting. I know it's very aimless in parts, and it's all about, you know, these two riders. They get asked to like take some drugs across the states. They end up going to New Orleans in the search of like the ultimate party for Mardi Gras, and then the film just ends in one massive anticlimax. And I think there's something very powerful about that ending, and it's something, to me, Easy Rider is about how kind of the previous generation were failing America's youth at the time, and talking about how, you know, we're talking JFK talking about like there being a new frontier on the horizon. We have so much to look forward to, when in actual fact, what's happening is you've got a regressive kind of trend pushing against the positive advancements that people are trying to make with their own personal liberty. And that ending, I don't know, have you seen Easy Rider?
I actually haven't seen Easy Rider. I'm absorbing this all in. I'm like,
are you interested in seeing Easy Rider?
From that, maybe.
It's one of those.
You're never watching Easy Rider.
I'm not a fan of like stoner movies. I think that they can continue.
It's more that they do more than weed in the film, but like the ending is very powerful and very kind of dark and grim, and it just kind of stops. And it's one of those things where it kind of comes out of nowhere. I don't know if you've ever seen American Graffiti.
Yes.
It kind of reminds me of that ending where it's like, and here's everyone who died.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of like that, but it's one of those things where I think it still is such a powerful statement of filmmaking, and it's very kind of experimental in different parts as well. It has the legendary soundtrack, which is one of the best film soundtracks of all time. And then just, you know, Dennis Hopper, you got Jack Nicholson as well. I think it's just amazing. I didn't know until the other day that Rip Torn was originally meant to be on that film. Apparently pulled a knife out on Dennis Hopper and then got kicked off and was replaced by Jack Nicholson. So there we go.
Jeez.
I agree with it's weird, Ewan, because I agree with everything you just said. But I as a film, I don't enjoy it much. I love what it represents. I love that it represents this sort of generational divide, and it ushered in, you know, new Hollywood cinema, or helped usher it in, and a brand new style of filmmaking that's still like sort of adopted to this day, or like inspires movies to this day. I don't know why I don't like it though. I might even have to go back and watch it again. Maybe it's because I had to do it in university as well. Maybe I just rally against it or what. But I love everything it represents. I love its place in cinematic history. I will always sort of like big it up as that element. And yet, I just need to rewatch it.
I feel like it's kind of like the Blair Witch Project effect in it. Like
I kind of know what you mean.
it's kind of like that when people are like, "Oh, I really hate it," but all of the respect and like stuff that it did for the genre is very good.
Right. So tell us your next independent film.
Right. Let me have a consultation of my list. I'm going to go for The Autopsy of Jane Doe.
Ooh,
I have not seen it.
interesting show.
It's one of my favourite horror films of recent memory, just because of the tone that it sets. It's one that follows a very Hollywood like blockbuster sort of format, but is an independent film. I just think the way that it plays with not showing everything, and so basically, as you haven't seen it, I'll explain it. So there's a father and a son who work in a morgue, and they get given a body, and they say, "Tell us by morning what's happened to this body." It's turned up at a crime scene. She's buried in the floor. She's like perfectly flawless. What the hell's gone on here? What's gone on? Who is she? We don't know. And it's them like doing all of their normal morgue doings to the body, where they do the test, do everything else, and supernatural things start happening in this morgue underground. And there's a storm outside. They're trapped in there. They've got to find out what's going on. And it gets more and more intense as it goes on, because having a big spooky body in a morgue is already a scary enough premise as it is.
I'm just happy they're keeping the family business going.
Yeah,
Father and
it's
son
really nice.
morticians, like, son, I want you to follow in my footsteps.
Yeah.
What do you do, Dad? I cut up bodies for a living.
Exactly. It's lovely. It's really wholesome. But basically, as it plays out, as they do these things to this body and start like cutting into her and changing things up, they shift her face each time as like a representative of each like act in the film, and the emotions that she must be like going through as a corpse. And it's a really strange way of showing it. But it's all this mood comes from a dead body, and these actors and everything are wonderful, interact greatly, and all of the classic spooky things on the outside are very well implemented. But everything is distilled into the expression on this dead woman's face that changes each time they shift her, and it like goes from like obviously in pain to scared to angry, and then the things start reflecting around in the room that relate back to that. And I just think it's a wonderful framing method of doing it that's not really obvious as you watch it until you go back and go, oh, okay, that's what that represents, that's where that's come from, this is what this body means and where it has come from. I just think it's very interesting.
I'm hooked.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. It's quite like a normal horror film is the thing. I feel like I'm like, oh, it's amazing, but like it's quite a normal horror film. But like the way that it toys with your expectations is great, and I just think it's a very easy film to dive into.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. You
Good.
put it so eloquently, Ash, that I don't even have anything to add.
That's good because we're running out of time, so you need to tell me your next one.
Well, good question, Ewan. What is my next one? Oh, it's Donnie Darko, apparently.
Oh, that's so on brand.
It's got to be brought up, though,
It's
hasn't it?
so on brand. I've not watched this film since I was like 14, 15, and I was very emo.
Well, this is why I
Everyone's favourite emo
Yes,
film at 14.
this is why I need to sell it to you, Ewan, because I was the same. I watched this again when I was first getting into movies when I was very emo, and I was like, "Oh, this speaks to me, man." I
totally get
I
it.
totally get it. I'm going to watch the
I'm
director's cut.
basically
gonna
Jake
get it.
Gyllenhaal.
My life's so... I've been-
I need to find a weed cigarette. But no, I loved it back then, and then it was one of those movies that I sort of never really fell out of love with, but sort of in my mind warped. I thought, it's one of those. It's one of those like first entry movies that everyone bigs up, but then once you get a bit older,
Your entry level.
Yeah, entry level.
That in Fight Club is it too.
yeah, there you go. You like films now, but this was one where I sort of rallied against it for some reason. Thought, I might have grown out of it. Then I watched it a few years ago, and it just stands up. It was even better. I thought a lot of like the themes that were resonant to me when I was younger are even more resonant now. Like it just holds up so well, and I like the ambiguity of it. I like that although directors not having final cut on their movie is often a problem, I like that the director didn't get his final cut in this one, because I don't like all the timey-wimey time travel stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the most interesting part of the story. I think the most interesting part of the story is Donnie Darko sort of coming of age in this
Doggy
really...
Darko.
I didn't say Doggy Darko. I've lost his name now.
To be fair, now
Donnie
you've just given
Darko.
Universal the next big animated hit.
Right.
Doggy Darko.
I think I'm fine with that, as long as you watch it and enjoy it still.
I'll come back to it.
I think it's lovely. Yeah.
It is lovely. It's got a
It's
lush
my input.
soundtrack as well.
Yeah, it's great.
Echo and the Bunnymen.
I just like all of the theories about it. I like reading up afterwards all the different things that could happen. For people who haven't seen, I don't know, I don't want to do a spoiler in case we haven't
Everyone's
seen it.
got to have seen
Everyone's
Donnie
seen
Darko.
Well,
Donnie
big
Darko. You haven't
aliens
seen Donnie
aliens
Darko.
being like intrinsic to the plot. Like I just think that's fun, like weird. There's
Yeah.
no aliens in
I
it,
need
but
to
everyone's
watch
like,
this. It's been, in fact, it'll be coming up on like nearly 10 years since I've seen that film.
You need to watch it
So
again.
I
need to
probably
watch it
need to
again.
watch that
It's
again.
such a sort of
yeah.
lightning bolt thing. It shouldn't work. All of its elements scream that it shouldn't work.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's great. Jake Gyllenhaal, Maggie Gyllenhaal are both really good. Give it a go.
Oh, yeah.
Hell yeah.
it's like the tightest mess of a movie ever.
That's exactly. Yeah, you know what? There's no beating that. Ash just summed it up
A
perfectly.
tight mess.
A tight mess. A hot mess.
Moving swiftly on, I'm going to talk about Pulp Fiction.
Hey!
Because I'm basically trash, and I know I know it's not cool to like Tarantino in this day and age, and loads of people think he's really boring and stuff. But I will defend that man because I think Pulp Fiction is one of the best films I've ever seen, and like watching that film was kind of what really set me off into loving film as a whole. I remember kind of being obsessed when I was kind of like not quite a teenager. I remember being really obsessed with Bruce Willis. So I watched all the Die Hard films. My dad made me watch The Last Boy Scout, which is a very, very mediocre kind of action film, but whatever. And then I remember people being like, oh, one of the best Bruce Willis films of all time is Pulp Fiction. And then I watched Pulp Fiction with my family, and I was just completely captivated from start to finish. I was like, none of this should make any sense. It's like it's been cobbled together in different bits of string, and it all interlinks. And
it's like the Pepe Silva
just like, what? And like it's one of those things where like watching it is like it's such a transformative experience. Like I remember having such an appreciation for the craft of that film when I first watched it, and then after that I ended up looking up how it all came to be, and then I started getting interested in kind of the study of cinema, like learning about kind of John Travolta's own career and how this film really reignited him as a major force in Hollywood. It kind of comes back and forth in different like decades, but whatever. And just that film was to me like everything. Like I love that film. I think it's still probably up there with one of my favorite films of all time to this day. I always really struggle to like say it's my best film, but it's probably up there.
Yeah.
And it's just everything about it just works for me. I think there are definitely aspects that don't. Quentin Tarantino is a bit obsessed with the N-word, and that's really awkward. But I think just Samuel Jackson and John Travolta are just amazing, and like I love all the different stories. It is like a pulp novel, but in the 90s, and it's just great. And I don't care about the discussions of what is in the briefcase or whatever. It's more about the journey, and I really, really like that about Pulp Fiction.
Oh, I love the little briefcase stuff as well.
Yeah, there we go.
That's good.
I love it. It's really good.
It's good.
I was that annoying kid in school who watched Pulp Fiction for the first time and then came in and talked exclusively in Pulp Fiction quotes for an entire year. I was that guy, and I'm really, really sorry to everyone I went to school
You're
with.
in the office now.
Hey now.
I used to just get loads of Pulp Fiction merch. I had a jumper that was just the Big Kahuna Burger thing.
Nice.
I've still not tried a Big Kahuna Burger, but I still think it sounds really tasty to this day. A Hawaiian burger joint. That's actually no. I this is ridiculous. I still have my Bad Mofo wallet.
That's what I was just about to ask you. Yeah, I always wanted one of those. My mother would never let me, so thanks, man.
I still have my partner got me that when I was 16, and I still have that. So
nice.
that's
very,
sweet,
very
though.
cute.
Cool. Moving on from my sappy Pulp Fiction story. Ash, what is your final pick?
Is the final pick?
Is it final pick?
Are we on final pick?
It's 2 left.
There's 2 left. Did I just do my big number 1 pick before I did my thing?
Oh, no.
I did. Oh well, it's fine. I'll move on afterwards.
Are we doing top 4 or are we doing top 5?
We're doing top. I mean, we barely got any time left. So might as well just be a top 4. If you
Let's
want
go
to.
top 4.
Yeah.
Let's just
Top
go on the
4.
fly.
Okay, well, my other one was VHS2 before anthology formats and the way that it utilizes fan footage. But the one that I'm going to drop in because it needs to be mentioned and it's only just come out is Booksmart.
Yes.
Because there is so much to be said.
Still haven't seen it. I really want to.
You need to see it. It's like this is the culmination of the coming of age movie from the female perspective. It is fantastic, and this and Lady Bird and 8th Grade all come together to create this whole new era. I'm speaking exclusively in Michael Hamflett's words because I've been talking to him about it so much. But it's this whole new era of what it means to be a teenager with kind of like social media influence as well that kind of trickles into things. And Booksmart is just such a good time. How it approaches everything is fantastic. It has all of the smutty like sex jokes and everything that you'd expect from something like American Pie, but does not age like that film has. It celebrates all the good things of friendship, of school, and comes together in like this big, massive celebrate. And it's just really good and
It's really
fun.
lovely,
I
isn't
can't
it?
even describe it because it's just such an experience, and it speaks to everyone who has had like a childhood and teenagedom. Like it just encapsulates it perfectly, and I think that there's something that independent filmmaking does exceptionally well is tap into emotion and human experience, and this is that with like a glossy cinematic sheen on top. But the way it does it is incredible.
I think like exactly what you said there with 8th Grade, this, and Lady Bird. It's
Yeah.
sort of ruined every other coming of age movie both before and after because this has set the new bar and it's subverted like those cliches that never felt quite truthful to like reality in such a interesting, just sharp way that well, everything else is ruined now. This is the new standard, and at least we've got 3 great movies out of it, especially Booksmart, which is so funny
Booksmart
and
is the
lovely
best one of
and
all 3
great.
of them.
I mean,
Cool.
let's not fight Ash, but
It is the
Don't
best
fight.
one.
Don't have time to fight.
don't have time to fight.
Josh.
Hello.
What is
well,
yours, lads?
my number 2 was going to be Requiem for a Dream. Very
on brand again.
Is great and lovely and
Great and lovely.
Well, I mean, I'm using those words very
Lovely for
loosely
Josh
because I'm
Brown.
running out. Yeah. In comparison to Pink Flamingos, it is a wholesome movie. But I'm going to go with Nights and Weekends, which is a Joe Swanberg mumblecore movie. And he makes about 5 a
Mumblecore.
year.
Oh, I love
Mumblecore.
Mumblecore sounds like a music genre that you've definitely been I'm really at a mumblecore this week, mate.
I wish it was a music
It
genre.
sounds like Front Bottoms exclusively. would be Mumblecore, like.
Well, I think they all sort of like fit into
Yeah.
it because it's all just sort of anecdotal, kind of like vignette-y, jumping into someone's life for a brief amount of time, looking at like the sort of specific details rather than the larger whole. And I love that. This is just about a long-distance relationship set like before and after like they break up, and it's just it does something like no Hollywood movie could ever do. Like even from the filmmaking techniques, it's so amateur hour, and it's so the acting is kind of like a bit all over the place, and the sound mixing is all. It's all like if you just looked at it and looked at the individual parts, you wouldn't be sold on it. But again, like you said about Booksmart, it just captures like this relationship between these 2 characters in a way that Hollywood movies just would never dare to. Like it is very graphically sexually explicit, which can make you uncomfortable, but you never sort of see that aspect of a relationship put on screen in like this way.
More dicks.
Look, I'm just trying to sort of justify this nudie film that I put on here. But it's cool. Like, there's a bit at the end where they have an argument while they're having sex, and it's so uncomfortable and one of the ugliest, most brutal things I've ever seen. But also, like, oh god, this might happen sometimes, you know, to friends and definitely not me.
Oh God, such an insight.
Yeah. All of Joe Swanberg's movies, not all of them have his bits in it. Most of them do, but the most recent ones, Drinking Buddies, Happy Christmas, they're more sort of like the harder edges are being shaved off, yet they don't lose anything because they might have a Hollywood sheen. Like Booksmart, they might have the Hollywood sheen over the top of it, but the core of what made them so great in the first place hasn't been lost.
That's good.
Get into Mumblecore, Ewan.
Mumblecore. I'll try and get into Mumblecore. My other pick was going to be The Night of the Living Dead. It's probably one of the most important ones, but I completely run out of time, so I can't talk about it.
It's good.
Yeah, those were our favourite independent films of all time. I would love to hear I'm sure you guys would love to hear as well, your favourite independent films down in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And head back on over to whatculture.com where we have loads of stuff for you to read and quiz and look at and more.
Yeah.
As always, I've been Ewan. This has been Josh.
Hello, goodbye.
This has been Ash.
Goodbye.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye. Happy
Bye.
4th of July.
Happy 4th of July.
Welcome to Earth.
What?
Independence Day. Ah!